Good morning to you, good friends. I want to tell you first of all about Gulshan Esther. She was born originally Gulshan Fatima, a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. She was crippled at 6 months old by typhoid. Coming from a devout Muslim family, you would imagine that it would be impossible for such a person to become a Christian. Except that what happened was that Jesus appeared to her in her bedroom one night in a blaze of light, healed her crippled arm and leg, and did something else. You could never guess what it was unless you knew the story. Jesus that night taught her the Lord's Prayer. What creativity! What imagination! What a Jesus! Her story is told in the book The Torn Veil. Over 200,000 copies have been sold. Not many people have that kind of experience. That was what it took to get through to Gulshan Fatima and bring her to Christ. What did it take for Jesus to get through to you? For most of us, it's a combination of factors. For me, it was a preacher who gave me the information that Jesus had died on a cross for me. Not because I'd been good, but because I hadn't been good. That was the information that I needed. Then he continued to get through to me through my conscience, putting quiet pressure on me inside. And he did it for years. My conscience was provoked sometimes by other Christian people and the things they said to me. Sometimes when I prayed. Sometimes when I opened the Bible. Sometimes when I read Christian books and literature. Now there's a technical term that the church uses for the way that God gets through to us. They call it the means of grace. The means by which God gets through to the soul and opens our spiritual eyes and makes himself known to us. One of those ways, those means of grace, which makes an impression upon a thinking person, is the world of nature. This is nothing new. 3,000 years ago, King David writes like this: "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them." Had King David known then what we know now in our scientific age, he wouldn't have been any the less impressed. In fact, he would have been more impressed. Looking up at the heavens, what do we know now? Astronomers estimate that there are 100,000 million stars in our Milky Way alone. 1,000 million in just one galaxy. Outside of that, there are millions and millions of other galaxies also. The night sky was a wonder to King David. It's a wonder to us too. From the majesty of the night sky to the glories of an individual flower. Just look at one closely. Look at its shape, its structure, its colour, its sheer beauty. They do not labour or spin, said Jesus. They don't make any effort to be beautiful. That's just the way that they are. Look at that flower again. Solomon, who could afford the latest fashion, could even set the fashion, who could afford any clothing that he wanted. If he wanted gold thread, he had it. If he wanted a cloak made of butterflies' wings, he could have had it. But not even Solomon ever looked as lovely as one of these wildflowers, said Jesus. Stand amazed. a world of wonder in its beauty, its glory, its greatness, its interconnectedness, its orderliness. Stand amazed. But it's a world of double wonder. Not just for us to wonder in amazement, but to wonder too where it came from and why it's here in the first place. How did it come into being? There are only two possible explanations. One is that it's the product of random chance. It just is. There was no master plan, no designing hand. It just came into being all on its own, and it has no meaning at all. Whereas the alternative explanation is that it was created by a benevolent, intelligent, almighty being. That from its very loveliness, consistency, dependability, orderliness, we can see the fingerprints of the inventor who conceived it, of the engineer who constructed it, of the artist who painted it. This is a bespoke world created for us. Nature persuades us that that second explanation is the right one. Nature is the means by which God gets through to our brain, through to our minds, through to our hearts. I'm here, he says. Findable, knowable. Consider the flowers of the field, and you're on the pathway to the truth. And yet, if the planet was here, and it was covered with vibrant life, but there were no human beings, then the planet itself would be meaningless. For the world to mean something, it needs human beings to inhabit it, to see it, to appreciate it, to enjoy it. In itself, it has no meaning. Oh, that's so arrogant, the skeptics argue back. No, it's not arrogant. It is a fact. Take human beings off the planet, and what do you have left? A world without any purpose. It may exist, but for nothing. The world is incomplete in and of itself until it has conscious human beings inhabiting it. And it is that consciousness which sets us apart from the rest of the world of nature, giving us the capacity to understand the world, to study the world, to appreciate the world, and to respond to its creator with worship, praise, and thanksgiving, just as we are doing this morning. This thing within the protective shell of my skull we call the brain. It weighs about 3 pounds in total, and yet its capacity is extraordinary. Listen to this piece from an article on Live Science on the theme of one of the 7 biggest mysteries of the human body. They're writing about the brain. How do the 100 trillion neural connections in our brains work together to create the feeling of being alive? Many great thinkers consider consciousness to be the biggest mystery, not just of the human body, but the biggest one, period. As the neuroscientist V.S. Ramachandran put it, any single brain, including yours, is made up of atoms that were forged in the hearts of countless far-flung stars billions of years ago. These particles drifted for eons and light years until gravity and chance brought them together here and now. These atoms now form a conglomerate, your brain, that can not only ponder the very stars that gave it birth, but can also think about its own ability to think and wonder about its own ability to wonder. With the arrival of humans, it has been said, the universe has suddenly become conscious of itself. This truly is the greatest mystery of all. To wonder at its own ability to wonder. That is the capacity that we have. The universe is now conscious of itself. We are conscious of the universe. We are observers of it, inhabitants of it, participants within it, not onlookers from outside of it. So where does this take us? If nature has instructed us again this morning, we may want to say, so what? Well, two so whats then. One is what this all says to us in the midst of our life of trouble. What does it say to us? It says, comfort. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of people have died. Our economy has been blasted. There has been a coarsening of society. We wonder what will emerge in the coming months, if and when this is all over. So look at nature. Elihu, one of the friends of Job, said this to him, Job, stop and consider God's wonders. Put the two things alongside one another. Our present troubles in the nation and the world today, on the one hand, and God's almighty power, his creativity, his orderliness, his timelessness, his eternity, his sovereignty, his mind, on the other hand. Are there some unanswered questions? Yes, for sure, but not unanswered by him. He knows the answers. Are these unprecedented events? Yes, for sure, although there have been far worse pandemics in human history, but we are in his hands, just the same, and we can trust those hands. They are the hands of a creator, a benevolent God. Trust him, breathe peace from him, look at his poise, his control. Here's the second, so what? Prayer. In Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 5, we listen to an extraordinary prayer. The Israelites had been away in exile from their homeland for 70 years. Now they've returned to the city of Jerusalem. Ezra rebuilt the temple there, and Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of the city. But Nehemiah wanted to rebuild the relationship between the nation and God, as well as the walls and the other buildings. And this is where he began with these words. He said, "Blessed be your glorious name, and may it be exalted above all blessing and praise. You alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens and their starry host, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. You give life to everything, and the multitudes of heaven worship you." This is where praise begins and where prayer begins, as the Lord provokes us to wonder through the wonders of nature which are all around us. This is one of his means of grace. May God bless you. Amen.